All right. Let's see. We got six people in here. I managed to be a little small this week because of Christmas and whatnot. But I've got my tinfoil Santa hat on. I don't know if it's blurring out or not. Looks like it's okay. Um, and yeah, it's Tuesday, 6:30, and I just put it together to see. I got a couple texts or emails from people today about MicroStrategy and talking about strategy and whatnot. Um, and then I just wanted to open it up to see if anybody has anything they want to talk about specifically. Talking about the ATMs that are going on right now, talk about what the hell's going on with MicroStrategy and why it's, down at, what is it at, 380 or whatnot. So I want to just open it up to start and see if there's anything anybody wants to kind of questions or answers, open up for a Q&A or just a general topic. I am all ears.
I got a question. This is Rich on the thread.
Hey, Rich, what's up?
What's up, dude? Um, yeah, it's actually a couple questions. I'll just kind of kick us off. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of tangents, but seems like a basic question. But with MicroStrategy being a publicly traded company, and then with Saylor hitting the ATM, how do we know if he's actually creating more common stock, or if he's actually doing the convertible bonds? I mean, it's been repeating as we know the past 4 or 5 weeks Sunday night, but how do we know which of those levers he's actually pulling? And then the second part to that question is, if it is common stock, do we know in real time how many more shares he's creating, or do we find that out on quarterly earnings? Do you know that?
Yeah, so I think my understanding is it's on quarterly earnings that they issue that. It's not a real time. You're not going to get a real time tracker of shares for an
Got
outstanding
it.
company. It's going to be on that quarterly earnings, which is why some of these rumors go around about like he'll have to stop issuing, near the quarterly earnings. I saw a tweet the other day that was like something of the nature of some certain number of days out before the quarterly earnings, he has to stop with the ATMs because of that exact reason. They got to start compiling reports and putting things together, and so issuing new shares, closer and closer do we get to these quarterly earnings. At some point there's a cutoff basically where he has to stop. Um,
Yeah.
and I always question some of this conjecture that we see on Twitter, especially of like, oh well, he's in the QQQ, so now he has to stop with the ATMs, or there's a quarterly earning restriction or whatnot. I think that there's always, I think that the traditional finance people kind of get butted out by Bitcoiners who are just kind of screaming into the void. Maybe Brian has something to say on that. Brian, you got something?
Yeah, I'm about to share a link to a website called Whale Wisdom. I used to use this when I was working in TradFi to do exactly this. Basically, keep an eye on public companies, or I think you can all kinds of investment firms as well. You can track basically what they're investing in, what they're doing, their quarterly earnings, their 10Qs and 13Fs, and all these special things that they're required to report, being a publicly traded or a public financial firm. So Whale Wisdom, I sent a link to actually MSTR. Also, I wouldn't worry too much about all of the ATM offerings that they're doing, right? They are blowing through the, was it $21 billion
Yeah.
worth of ATMs because right right now it makes a lot more sense to issue the stock and dilute stock by the dollars per share metric because he is increasing so much the sats per share metric or Bitcoin per share metric. Um,
Yeah.
as soon as Bitcoin price starts to run, it will be a lot more attractive for him to use the other side of his offerings, the debt side of the offerings. In
Yeah.
fact, we might even see companies start to pay MicroStrategy for the right to buy their bonds. So, meaning they could start doing auctions, kind of like
Right.
how they auction the 30-year treasuries. And essentially get the top bidders to be able to actually give them money, which sounds completely wild
Right.
and odd and weird, but welcome to Bitcoin finance.
They start generating
Yeah.
income instead, right?
And this last one's a little more theoretical. But looking at everyone just on our own thread and other people that I'm talking to that are kind of playing this game with us, you know, the we know what Sailor's doing, right? But still, if you zoom out, we know what the stock's done over the last year, but then the last 30 days been, this chop sideways between whatever 320 and you can call it 450 or something like that. And we're getting impatient and we're seeing Bitcoin run and then MicroStrategy kind of bounce around. Like at some point, I mean, Sailor also has to know. People are like, man, maybe I should just move over to IBIT or move actually into Bitcoin, depending on where you have your money. So, do you think he's looking at that and like, man, people are going to start selling this if I don't let it run soon? Does he know the Qs might be a big day of the forced purchases? So I'm just kind of curious for your opinions if he's looking at that and wondering if people are going to start getting frustrated and maybe start moving out because it's not, they just want it now.
I mean, I have my theories on that. I think that Sailor is just like any one of us, and his goal is to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible because he knows that that is the most accretive thing he can do for his stockholders. That's the best
Right.
long-term thing he can do for stockholders. So, he does talk about selling volatility, and so the decrease in volatility may be something that he is considering. But I think he's got $7 billion left on this original $21 billion of ATM. I think that
Yeah.
he sees that we're, nation states are starting to talk about adoption, and U.S. might get front run here by some nation state in the next month. Right? We got a month left until inauguration day, when he can maybe do an executive order. But even an executive order is not gonna stick in the way that he needs it to. He needs a true, Bitcoin strategic reserve plan. Um, and so I think he's probably looking at ATM as like that's the fastest I can get money in, and so I'm going to use it as quickly as I can because I don't want to pay $150,000 per Bitcoin when I can pay $106,000 per Bitcoin. So
Yep.
my conjecture, and from what I've been reading and what he's been saying, is he doesn't give a shit about the stock price right now. He doesn't care about the options market. He doesn't care about what's even going on with MSTR. His whole thing is just like mine would be if I had the ability to do what he's doing, is get as much Bitcoin as quickly as possible. Um, and I don't see him acting any way outside of that sort of main focus. I don't know if anybody else
Yep.
has any, 2 cents they want to throw in there.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you think about what he's chasing right now. He's chasing the most scarce asset. He can issue new shares at any time. He can issue bonds at any time. The only question is, at what price are these products actually wanted? And that's dictated by the market once they are available. So today it's the mad dash to collect with a lot less competition to collect as much Bitcoin as possible, right? We're starting to see countries talk about Bitcoin reserves all around the world. And a lot more entrants are about to step into the ring with Sailor trying to acquire as much dollars or excuse me as much Bitcoin as possible. And also think of it like this: is it's all rubber band effect. The higher they can push Bitcoin per share, the faster the ricochet back, right? He's stretching out the rubber band right now, and the
Right.
faster the ricochet back towards the other direction is going to happen as soon as Bitcoin starts to hit its parabolic move this cycle.
Yep. Totally agree. Thanks, guys. I appreciate the insights.
I read too, based on the number of shares, he basically once he gets through this 7 billion or whatever he has left, he can fundraise more, but I don't think he can issue very many more shares without going over the current cap of like there's different levels of share cap, I think. So basically you'd have to get approval to issue more shares than the 300 whatever million. So I think there's after maybe this run or maybe the next run, it's going to take some time before he can do it again in that same way. So to everyone's point, spend the money that he's kind of already got at the lowest cost for of Bitcoin and do it as much as he can until he kind of hits the next roadblock.
Yeah, and right now he's got a big he has a big runway because he did a shelf offering, which means all of this product is ready to be pulled off the shelf. It's already been issued, not released into the public, kind of like the issuance of Bitcoin every day. So he's already worked with the S. Oh, that's okay, buddy. So he already has the approval of the SEC, and it's just about when he wants to issue it into the public market. Oh, it's okay, dude. I know red candles bother me too.
Well, I posted today. I think it's interesting. People get impatient, and when people get impatient and start looking at short time frames, you can put whatever narrative you want onto MicroStrategy. And maybe we're wrong. Like maybe holding the most Bitcoin in the world isn't a superpower. Maybe being able to issue shares at zero cost to you isn't a superpower. Maybe not having to borrow against your assets to get a ton of cash that you don't have to pay back until 2029, which you can immediately sink into the fastest, largest growing asset in the world isn't a superpower. I don't know, but to me, those all seem like superpowers, uh, and the company that is able to do that at the greatest scale is MicroStrategy. So how that is not going to be more valuable in the future, I don't know. Now, I'm sitting on some. I'll be totally transparent. I'm sitting on some options that I bought that are in that expired January 17th. I bought them a while ago, so they're barely in the money right now. But if I had bought them, during this last run up, and I'm sitting on 800s, this might not get filled. And he talks about that, and I'd be lying if I didn't think we were going higher soon. But nobody knows. I was having this conversation yesterday. Like nobody knows. This is my third cycle now, and in 2017 it was going to 25K. There was no way it wasn't going to 25K or 50K. In 2021, it was definitely going to $280,000 a coin. And then this cycle, it was like everybody was going, I think 150 is probably the top. I kept hearing 150, 150, 150, 150. Well, here we are, not even in January, and we're already at 106. So now what are you hearing? You're hearing, oh, we're going to a million. Maybe we're going to 1.5 million. Maybe we're going to 500,000. These numbers just people throw them out at the wall. And I could honestly make a case without hyperbole that we could be going to that we already hit the top at 108 today. Today could be the absolute top, and we're just going to go down from here, or we're going to go to $2 million a coin in the next year. And I could easily make arguments for both of those things being true. And the truth is, nobody knows. And it's the same with MicroStrategy. You don't know if 540 was the top for the year. You don't. There's no way for me to tell you if that's the case or not. I don't think it is. But I also could make a case that it's going to 5,000 by the summer. And so that's where this options thing, people have been asking a lot about what options you're buying or which ones would you buy now? Would you play? I feel like I got really lucky with some options I bought last year that they've done very well for me. It's been super fun to play that game. I think that I do still believe that options are going to move in a certain direction, but if you don't have conviction on timing, because none of us really should have conviction on timing, then I think buying MicroStrategy is a great option. It's a great play to just sit in MicroStrategy the same way that I sit in Bitcoin, because I know that in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be worth far more than it is today. Do I know what it's going to be worth in 6 months? Absolutely not. Um, but I'm here to discuss. If people want to talk about options and that kind of thing, we can talk about, what might be the way that I do it. I'm been totally transparent with everybody. I got very lucky with my MicroStrategy play last year. And all I did was buy call options, and I still hold I still hold a bunch of contracts. Um, and I think that they're still going to do great, and they're going to outperform just holding MicroStrategy. But if I'm wrong, I'm totally wrong. Whereas if you're just holding MicroStrategy and you're wrong, well, as long as you can hang on to them for the next 5 or 10 years, then you don't care. Um, and I just reminded me, I was looking today because I was curious, and I found the first two emails I wrote about Bitcoin. The first one was in 2015. It was a response to my brother writing an email of like, "Hey, here's this Bitcoin thing. What do you guys think?" And I said, it's either going to completely change how we store, transact, or use money, or it's going to be a bust. We'll see. And then the next email was 2 years later to my entire family saying, okay, I bought Bitcoin today, and I think you all should put in money. It's either going to go, and it's a very similar sentence, which was like, in 5 years, it's going to go 5 to 10x. It went 14x. And in our lifetime, it's going to be priced in the millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. So either I'm wrong in that I'm going to lose the 10 grand I'm putting in today, or it's going to go to, or that 10 grand is going to be worth $4 to $10 million someday. We'll see. I feel very similar about MicroStrategy at this point. And that's my 2 to 5 cents.
Nice.
Let's see. Okay, what else we got here? Who else has got some stuff to talk about today? Questions, comments, concerns?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
First of all, I like your hat.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fantastic. So what I was gonna say is, I think the volatility in the stock right now is just an awesome opportunity. I mean, Master trades like a shit coin. You get pretty much two opportunities a week. You go up 30%, go down 30%, basically, like at least twice a week, basically, if you do it right. So what I've been doing is just essentially day trading long call options, and Schwab hasn't gotten pissed off at me yet. But like, for example, yesterday when we saw really good movement in the morning, I bought in, wrote it up, and then sold the contract like 20 minutes later. So I've been doing shit like that. But otherwise, just trying to get more money in my account so I can do another long call that I'm going to sit on the next, say, 6 months,
Yeah. So
building that
you're
account
you're
up.
you're a, you're a madman, Ben.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy,
Are
but
you making
it's
more
just
money doing this, or are you making more money trading shitcoins on the daily?
shit coins for sure, for sure. But I mean, it just doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, I think I was talking to Blake about this the other day. Like when this money runs out that Sailor's buying Bitcoin with right now,
Right.
I think it might time perfectly with Bitcoin doing a run up to 120K. That's kind of what I think it's setting up for right now. And I think when that happens, the stock is going to run. We might get another run up to the 550 range, and then I don't really know what happens after that. But my guess, instead of ranging between like 380 and 420 like we've been doing, maybe it'll start ranging between like 480 and 520 or something like that as we go on the next leg up.
Yeah, I mean,
Next
I don't
next
know. I
week.
mean, if you, this feels, I think like a lot like Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, like it's like it doesn't move when everybody's watching it, just like Bitcoin, right? Like
Right.
it, we throughout the summer there was all this conversation about it. It was kind of just ranging, from 70 down to what I think it touched 49 or maybe low 50s. And it ranged for 6 months, 6 months, 6 months until we finally got pushed back up to about 70K, and then the election, and then off it went. And then, it just kind of it's like this scared like cat. It's like it's like boiling water. Like it won't boil when watched. And I feel like MicroStrategy, there was so much news, so much information, so much press. Everybody all of a sudden talking about MicroStrategy going to, it was everywhere because it went from what 160 to 500 in like a little more than 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Um,
Right.
and all of a sudden, I'm hearing it from people that I've never even heard talk about stocks or wanting to talk about MicroStrategy. And so in comes the institutional shorters, market players who don't understand Bitcoin and think that this is all a Ponzi scheme, so they want to short it, and everybody wants to, claim their pound of flesh. And I think that they will either get stopped out or they'll get bored and they'll move on to something else, which allows that the upward pressure of what now, over a month
Right.
ago, he had less than 300,000 Bitcoin. Now he's holding 439,000. Is that right? That's the most recent update.
He's just been buying the
439,000
dip
Bitcoin.
because if you think about it, usually at this point in the past cycles, we get this massive 20-30% pullback,
Right.
right? It's like this
Right.
wild dip. But the dip this time is just trading sideways essentially. I mean, we wicked up, we hit what 104, and then it nuked straight to like 92,
Right.
liquidated everybody, cleaned everything out, and that happened twice essentially, right? So this is that 30% dip right at the beginning of the bull cycle, essentially. But it's just the way it looks now as it just trades sideways. So I think 107 right now, or I think we're at 105, is basically the same thing as 100 in my opinion. But I
Right.
think once it's done trading sideways and consolidating, um, I said this a few times over the last week, but this setup right now is even more bullish than it looked in the 60s. So I think we get, another 15, 20, 25 weeks of just green candles after this shit's over. So, I mean, Mike's strategy is just gonna run.
I was just saying December 14th was this magic number that I literally pulled out of my ass, but it's so far December 14th has been, seemingly the beginning of this new move up.
It
Um,
was also a full moon.
See, yeah, see, you were saying, Ben,
I told
you've
you.
been astrologizing this shit for a week. You told me it's got a 95%, trading.
Guys, look up the Bitcoin cycle with the moon cycles. It's gonna blow your mind. There's definitely something weird going on. You got to respect the rock, full moon, full send.
That's
So that's what I think's going on. I'm just looking at the
if
moon
we
from
had
now on.
13 months, if we had 13 months, we'd have 28 days every month, and every month would start on Monday, end on Sunday, right? That's how much the government
What?
hates me, by the way. If there were 13 months, we'd have 28 days per month. Every month would start on Monday, end on a Sunday, and we would be in the cycle with the moon. See, this is perfect for my tinfoil hat on. This is just spreading some facts to
Yeah.
you. Uh,
I was gonna
we
Yeah,
say
need
then
that's
the
really
we
good.
moons
need
would line up probably, right?
what's that?
I was gonna say then the moon cycle would probably line up correctly.
And the moon cycle will line up correctly. And the
Right.
whole reason we don't is because egotistical Romans, basically. You got Augustus wanted a month. You got tax day that they want to change from March. So the new year used to start at the spring equinox, and then through malfeasance of government over many, many, many years, they added a month, and then got rid of 2 months. I mean, October should be the eighth month. It's the 10th month. December, Deca, should be the 10th month. It's the 12th month. Just in case you guys need any more reminder, the government fucking hates you and you should despise everything they do.
Correct.
That's really why we're here. Don't forget. The government hates you. You're trying to free yourself from their shit. All right, what else we got? Trying to think of other sort of Bitcoin related sort of bull news is I think Ben keeps pointing out this fact that we're missing these 30% drawdowns. I think a lot of that can be pointed at the MicroStrategy of the world and people that are following them either publicly or privately. And then I think there's this used to be um, individual FOMO, right? You finally convince your friend to buy some Bitcoin, and then before you know it, he's like, "Oh shit, I gotta get more in. I gotta get more in. I gotta get more in." Same thing's gonna happen at the nation state level. Everybody's looking at Trump and possibly doing a executive order or Bitcoin Strategic Reserve from Cynthia Loomis, and they're going, "Well, shit, I don't want to get priced out of this thing." You've already got El Salvador and Bhutan doing their thing. You got other nation states. There's all this conversation about Abu Dhabi and possibly um, other Middle Eastern states that are getting involved. And if January 20th comes and President Trump actually uses the Dollar Stabilization Act uh, to put money into Bitcoin before they can even worry about getting a Bitcoin strategic reserve, then that's when I start looking at these cases where it's like, okay, maybe we're not going to 150 this time, or maybe we're not done this time. Maybe we're going to 200, 300, 400 into the millions, and this really is that S curve adoption.
We'll see how high they
We
can
won't
pump
know.
it.
We'll never know.
I
I
think
mean, we won't never know. We'll know eventually, but unfortunately, it's very difficult to claim in the moment.
yeah, I think it's important to remember that I mean everything's I don't know. I think everyone's I don't know if you've been around for a few cycles like for me, like I've been totally dead inside since like the 2017 cycle. You know what I mean? But like right now, I heard someone talking about this earlier too, is like we used to get $1,000 move in a day and we'd freak out. It's like
Right.
crazy.
Right.
Now, Bitcoin moves from 100 to 105. We're like, I think it has to move a full 10K for us to actually feel anything. So I think once Trump gets in, day one, he frees Ross, 10K candle over the next 2, 3 days, something like that. That's what I think is going to happen. So I think each bullish thing that comes out, his new appointees, whatever, they say something like, because in past cycles, what ended the cycles was government people opening their mouths, right? This cycle, it's the other way around. What's going to keep the cycle going is government people opening their mouths. And I think that's a very interesting difference this time around. You don't have the China ban that's going to end things, lead to like the FTX collapse and all that kinds of shit. It's kind of the other way around in this cycle. So as
Yeah.
far as like the master options and getting into like a strategy, like right now I'm just doing long calls just based on my thesis that we're just gonna see 10K like God candles all the time over the next few months. But once we get into it, then I'll switch to covered calls and start doing some other strategies there. So
Well, I
that's
think
my
the people,
thesis.
I think you're right. I think it's interesting is like you think about the people who are around, when $100 was a big move, right? When people when they crossed $100 for the first time, right? Like they started going, oh, we were at 100, we're at 200, we're at 300. We would never look at $100 moves today. Um, the same way
Right.
that's the same way $1,000 moves are now becoming to us. Like celebrating 102, 103, 104 is becoming sort of silly, you
And
know.
$1,000 move is 1% right now,
Right,
over 100.
right.
It's like it's
But it's also,
dumb.
what
It's
I've
boring.
and for people who have, people who've been here for a while, my first Bitcoin I bought at $2,500. So that means that every $2,500 is the entire market cap of when I first bought in 2017, right? So like
Right.
that's what this game is. And so and for people who are newer, people who are getting into it now, it seems like such a daunting number, 100,000. But fast forward when we're at $1 million a coin, all of a sudden this $100,000 moves, you're like, holy crap, $100,000 move today. That was the entire market cap when I got in 2024. It's like, well, yeah, but now it's just a 10% move. It's just a it's a daily occurrence some along the way. And eventually it'll be a $10 million a coin, and then you're talking about, 1% moves. $100,000 is gonna be a 1% move. We won't even think about it. And I
Everything is relative. Everything is relative.
Everything's relative, and I think people get wrapped around the idea that like $100,000 is so much money right now, and it is. It's a ton of money. $100,000
Well,
is what
inflation adjusted, we're not that far above the all-time high from the last cycle. Think
that's
about
true.
it that way.
Well, and
So we're
if you really want to factor it in, I don't think we really even reached what I consider all time high because if you take away that government interaction, you take away FTX, you take away the China ban, and we probably hit somewhere in the 100,000 last time, right?
we would have hit 100. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
And and we didn't, and that means that like you to me I reset my expectations around, okay, well, if that stuff hadn't happened, we would have hit 100 to 125K in the last cycle. So really we're not even at all-time highs yet, and so we got a long way to go, and I'm here for it. So
So retail's not even in yet, right? If you don't count like
retail is ever going to show up? I don't know. Does retail matter? That's a good question though. Does retail even matter when you're talking about two
retail matters a lot.
even when it's a $2 trillion asset? Is retail coming into Bitcoin, or are they going straight into meme coins and shit coins?
No, they'll come into Bitcoin. I think a lot of that money that has been coming in through the ETFs and like tax advantage accounts and stuff. That's why I tell like boomers, pump my bags, you know?
I mean, they got a lot of money to pump, so I'm here for it.
Yeah.
What have you guys seen about like the current burn rate with the ETFs, with MicroStrategy, with whoever buying, not including any nation states, and looking at the Bitcoin reserve, there's only like 35 weeks left if you look at, how many are mined daily versus how many are bought
There's only 35 weeks left of what?
of like reserve in
Oh,
traded
like on exchanges and stuff?
on
Oh,
exchanges.
dude,
Yeah.
the exchanges, the top three exchanges, so like Coinbase, Binance, who's the other one? I think is it Kraken? I think Kraken's actually like number 4 or 5 or something like that. They actually have a decent amount of coin, but all the smaller exchanges, like the Korean exchanges, and like all the random smaller exchanges, they're running out of coin so fast right now. I'm gonna try to find a graph for it. Like you can see that supply shock incoming.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna
it
try to
seems,
find that.
seems like just like anything. I mean, the price is gonna have to go much higher if that's true. If we're talking about, especially,
Once
if
it's
nation
like
states
a,
come in with
yeah.
a big appetite,
Yep.
like I said, I don't, yes, I think maybe retail matters a little bit, but I like Lynn Alden had a good sort of explanation of prices trading in the margin. Talking about a neighborhood that's got 50 homes, and each home, the last couple homes is sold at $500,000 a home, and then one house happens to sell for 600,000, and then the next house sells for 600,000. So now two of the 50 has sold for 600,000. So the market cap of that neighborhood has just gone up by $5 million or $50 million because 50 homes are now times 100 grand. But if you tried to sell all of them at that time, the market cap wouldn't stay there because all those houses wouldn't sell for 600 grand. But that's really what's setting the price, right? Is that margin. And so there are people in that neighborhood that are, hardcore Bitcoiners. They're never going to sell their house because they just love the neighborhood and they've lived there for generations and whatnot. And then there are other people who maybe it's their starter home and they're just moving in and moving out. And you can look at Bitcoin and any asset that trades that way in a very similar way. I just thought that was a really good articulation of like how market caps and trading and defining a asset's price really works. Now, Bitcoin's probably the best priced asset in the world because it does trade 24/7. It has massive volume. I think the volume on Bitcoin now is approaching $60 billion a day. And so it's very well priced where it should be. But even with that, we still get these spikes up and down. And, we go to 108 today, down to 105. We see 100K again. Who knows? Are we going to see 125 by Christmas or by, the new year? It's anybody's guess. But it's well priced, especially at this point because there's so much money and there's so many players involved.
Yeah, let
Um,
me let me share my screen.
yeah, let's see.
Or
Yeah, me
do I
too. Or
do it?
do I need to let you?
Oh no, I can just click it.
Let's
Oh, I
see.
have to send a request.
Okay, go
Sent the
ahead.
request.
Request received.
That housing example too that you brought up from Lynn Alden, it's a pure perfect example of how supply demand dynamics fit into a market.
What do you mean?
And that's exactly what you get with Bitcoin, right? The supply is completely limited. So really all we get to read about is the demand of Bitcoin. And that equates to what we use to measure the world, which is the US dollar, right? Or the world of value. So you can't affect the supply side of that equation, of the supply demand equation. We are 100% watching the demand react. Demand goes up, price goes up. Demand goes down, price goes down. Now it's bigger. We've got $2 trillion in market cap, and it's big enough to attract the demand from bigger pools of money, right? We had basically the piping into the biggest, most liquid markets in the world input earlier this year with the ETFs. And now
Right.
you've got a bunch of different products on Wall Street, which is just like MicroStrategy, their debt offerings, which the debt market is a whole lot bigger than the equities market. So every time there's these new highways plugged in to Bitcoin to offer more flow, faster flow, and it's just we're watching the demand continue to either increase or decrease. But until we get, you know, full open flow, like 1 gig data speeds, if you will, into the Bitcoin pot of value, you're only going to see demand over time go up until you hit that equilibrium price where literally all value now has access to Bitcoin, and you're going to find the true supply and demand, which again, supply you can't change. So
Can't
we're
change
just
supply.
watching the demand.
Right. And this is why you get people going, Bitcoin's going to 2
Correct.
million, it's
Yep.
like 3 million or whatever the hell. What you got, Ben?
That was well said, Mr. Not giving financial advice.
Yeah,
That's a
Um,
great point. This is not financial, tax, or
we got to
legal
make sure we
advice.
don't. I don't think you really cover your ass when you say that, but I appreciate it every time.
Hey man, I'm not an advisor, and I'm definitely none of y'all's advisors. So
um, yeah, so there's some of the bigger exchanges, like, Binance. Binance is looking pretty good. So like basically this chart is the Bitcoin price on top, and then on the bottom here is the um Bitcoin supply on the exchange. Or is it the other way around? Dude, I have blue light filter glasses on and my screen is in dark mode and it's like I can't see shit right now, to
All
be
right.
honest
Well,
with you
yeah, the
guys. But
top line purple is the exchange amount, and then the other one's price. So yeah, uh,
correct.
go to
Yeah.
all
So
exchanges.
the big exchanges are looking good, but they always are like that. But all the other exchanges, like, or even Coinbase Advanced, like
Yeah.
that's a huge. But overall, like if you look at all exchanges, like this is a ticking time bomb right here.
Is that
Like
all
this is a
exchanges? Yeah. Okay.
bro, that's a wild looking chart, my guy.
So what's
I
that?
mean, look at that.
This is back in
Let's go back. Well,
January
let us go back.
2022.
I don't. Well, let us go back really far. Yeah, it's only letting us go back to 22, but
Okay.
this is basically the trend from like the last bull cycle. Like after
Right.
2017, like from 2017 to 2020, this is kind of when that trend started, is like you see the coin just kind of dwindling off exchanges. And that's obviously continuing. But I mean, look how crazy this is.
Yeah. Wow. So you're looking at
So
what, 3.5 million is all the way down. It's below three now, down to 2.6 million on exchanges.
That's a beautiful chart.
That is a beautiful
it's
chart.
very beautiful. I love it. So, all right, I'm done. How do I get out of here?
I don't know, maybe share at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know how to stop sharing. We'll just keep that chart up unless you want to turn it off.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Mike, you texted me earlier. Did you have any questions about, you were talking about options and stuff? I want to answer as many questions as I can. Or I think Fernando was typing a little bit in the chat. If Fernando or Mike have any questions, go for it. If they're not there, that's all good.
I have a
I've got a question.
question.
Oh, what do you got?
You go first.
I'm just wondering the best way to learn about covered calls. I don't know much about options and puts and so on.
Well,
Just YouTube videos or
yeah, they're definitely YouTube videos. We talked a lot. Joe, who's not with us today, talked a little bit about it on the last two calls that we had here. And I posted both those videos on YouTube. You can go and kind of listen through some of that, where he covers it. How much have you been involved in options so far?
none in options,
Okay.
but in Bitcoin for a long time.
Okay. So yeah, we covered a little bit in the last couple. You got to own, generally speaking, you got to own 100 shares of whatever you want to start selling covered calls on, and then you can start messing with selling covered calls, which is basically just taking a premium for a price that's generally above the current price. So you're selling a covered call, somebody else is buying that call, and they're paying a price to buy that option, and you're selling that option, and that's really what you're doing with a covered call. So right now we're trading at 380 or whatever it is. You may sell a covered call for next week at 450. You're going to get a premium for that, a certain number. If it gets to that price, then you're forced to sell your shares at that price, which is fine because you've gotten a pretty good
Still profit. Yeah.
you still got a good amount of money out of it, and you've got the premium which you get to keep. The only issue with cover calls that I see is if you do a long dated covered call, which you're going to collect a larger premium for, like let's say you do a 6 month out 550 call, if the price runs from here to 1,000 or 2,000 in that time frame, you're going to be forced to sell at 550 and you're going to be out of that money for the entire 6 months. And that's sort of the risk you're playing. So a lot of people do really short term kind of covered calls so that they lower their risk of missing out on massive runs that might happen. Um, but the actual like numbers of it and stuff, again, Joe talked about it in our last call, and I'll post this video when we're done to Slack, and then you can look through my channel and you can find, last week and the week before.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. I appreciate all that.
Yeah, you got it. Mike, what'd you have? Mike H.
Yeah, so I'm gonna buy my first option call. I think I know kind of the parameters that I want to look at. So basically, when you buy it, I mean that's the max you can lose. That would be your max downside, and then you just I'll go for a kind of a strike price on the low side. I mean, it's like 560, I think, is one of the strike prices for next December.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, yeah, but then like as long as the price triples anytime in the next year, then I'm in profit.
Yeah, and
It's actually
also
even
just
double.
it's also important to remember that like even if we've talked about this a few times, but the thing that I didn't understand was like I thought it was a binary, right? Like if I buy this option today, if it doesn't get to that price, that strike price, right, then I'm gonna lose money. So, a 550 call in March, let's say, if it doesn't get to 550, then I'm SOL. And that's true if
Right.
you wait till expiration. But if the price moves considerably between now and then above the rate at which it would need to move, so basically if you drew a straight line, it's not a straight line, but let's just say for argument's sake, if you drew a straight line from 380 to 550, then if you move along that line, so basically if the price moves as expected, you're not going to make any money. But if it moves a little bit faster than that, let's say
Mhm.
next week it jumps to 500, uh, then your option that you have is worth a lot more, and you can sell that option back to somebody else, and you can get out with a profit without it ever going to 550. So even if it doesn't
Right.
even if it doesn't get to the strike price that you're looking for, you can still make money if it moves a little bit quicker than is expected. Any time between now and the date that you have selected for your options, if that makes sense. So that's just something to also, I think when I got into calls, it was really like, okay, I'm making this one-time bet, and if I'm right, I'm going to make money. If I'm wrong, I'm going to lose all my money, and that's not 100% true. You can still do okay if the price moves faster than expected. So really, it's really about time decay rather than an expected price. So if it just stays flat, so every day that your price stays flat, if you're betting an out of the money call, you're losing money on that option. That option price is going to go down. So if it just stays at 400 every day for a
Right.
month, the value of your option is going to go down because your time is getting compressed that you have left to be correct essentially. But the opposite is also true. If the price moves very quickly, even if it doesn't get to your strike, your option is going to be worth a lot more money, even if it doesn't get to that strike. So you can move in and out of these things. It's a little bit like buying bets on a game, and the value of that ticket or the value of that bet is changing all the time based on what the score is at the time and what quarter it might be left in the game, and because of that, you can sell these things and trade them just like you would kind of trade, almost like trading, lottery tickets or trading bets on a sports game. Um,
Okay.
so right now, I personally believe that because we're in a volatile time, because we think Bitcoin is going to move quite a bit the next year, and I also think MicroStrategy is going to move a lot the next year. Cover calls are great. They're great income generating. They're great for a time when you think that the price of the underlying isn't going to move a ton. If you're just a bull and you think Bitcoin's going to go through the roof and MicroStrategy is going to go through the roof, then either buying the underlying itself and just holding it for a decade, or if you want to try to play some covered call or just play calls, buying a long dated call option for, next December or next summer, something like that, those kind of things make sense. Now, unfortunately, I think we're inside what I consider the safe window for holding it for a year. So these are going to be short-term capital gains when you do exercise these options. If you were here in the summer or last spring or last year, you could buy something, an option that's dated out at a point that's past a year from the current date that you're buying them, and you could hold it for a whole year, and then you could get into long-term capital gains. Personally, I don't feel comfortable holding anything into next December that's levered. Um, this could be the super cycle that breaks the general 4-year cycle, and maybe it is. It's certainly lining up in a way for that to be. But I will be in Bitcoin by the end of the year, and probably Bitcoin only, and maybe MicroStrategy shares. But I won't be in a covered. I won't be in a call option. I won't be taking any more loans. I won't be in any levered position in which I can either lose my whole nut or get margin called or any of that stuff. And I try to stress that as much as possible. Like, the safest thing you can do is buy my Bitcoin, and you really shouldn't even be thinking about MicroStrategy if you don't already have a decent Bitcoin stack or a stack that you're happy with. Um,
Yep.
so, long story short, yeah, I mean, cover calls are interesting to learn about. I feel like I'm learning that Swiss Army knife to use in the future. But personally, I'm buying call options that are dated out of December or even, and again, if you don't plan on holding them through the next year, it doesn't really matter which ones you buy. You could buy, 2026 options. You could buy 2025 options. You could buy December. You could buy whatever. But again, as long as the price moves in the right direction and it does so quickly, your strike price and your date don't really matter. The longer you can price it out, the more room you're giving the stock to breathe. And that's sort of what I've been telling people is like I think a year out is a good one. You may not hold it for a whole year, but it gives you a chance to say, okay, I've held it for 6 months, or the price has moved up much faster than I expected. Now's a good time to get out. Um, anyway, that's my rant.
What do you use to judge when to sell it? I mean, you want to sell it
Tingling in
right
my balls. No, I don't know.
now. Yeah.
Um, I personally, I've got Bitcoin disease, so I don't sell things. I don't feel comfortable selling things. In fact, one of the nice things about options is I can't hold it forever, so I have to make a decision at some point. And so it sort of forces the action. And in fact, the only call option that I have owned, uh, I let expire because of that exact reason. Like I didn't have a good time to be like, okay, this feels like a good time to sell it. This one doesn't. For me, I have a timeline of when I want to be out of leverage next year. And that's a rough number of like, early to late summer. But I don't know. I don't think there'll be like a moment where like, oh shit, we hit 1,000. Okay, I'm gonna close all these options. I think it's more gonna be just personal financial timing rather than anything else. And I think that's something that everybody has to kind of look at for themselves.
All right. Thanks.
You got it. All right, what else we got? Amadeus, you've been so quiet. And he remains quiet. What else we got?
Bro, how's it going, man?
What's up? There he is.
Yeah, I actually I missed a good deal of this chat. Me and my wife were catching up about the day, trying to figure out what the kids are up to tomorrow. But it's good to see you guys are doing this on the regs, trying to keep the newbies from burning and blowing up their hands in their first cycle. Yeah, there was some talk about when to deleverage. I think your timeline's similar to mine. I know you're not a huge fan of it, but I do suggest everyone look at the power law. I do think it's as good a tool as you can get in sort of trying to figure out the ranges and spaces that this thing's going to go. And something that's held up for over a decade is no joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean you nailed the points, man. DCA that BTC, whole MSTR. If you get to 100, you get a lot of pros having 100 shares. I hope it splits again. you know.
Yeah, a lot of optionality with 100 shares for sure.
Yeah, 100 shares really, yeah. And someone was asking, it's like a good thing for newbies. Like, dude, learning how to play MSTR is such an interesting way to get your teeth cut in finance.
It's
Um,
fascinating. I mean, I think about like I've been buying stocks since I was 18 years old, and like I've learned more in the last two
yeah,
years trading and looking at MSTR than I ever learned,
yeah,
holding
I
Apple and
feel you.
all these other
Yeah,
stocks that I held in my
Dude,
life.
I've read
exactly.
like 3 books. Two
Right?
books that some guy in this chat recommended like what 4 weeks ago. I read 2 of them, and then I
What the
bought
manual? Yeah.
Options Trading for Dummies. I got all the way to where it's talking about like the 8 leg, you know, all the condor and all that crazy. I was like, I'm not interested in this.
Oh yeah, you're
Um,
Yeah, I
talking about
wouldn't
like
start going with
yeah,
like iron condors and shit like
the
that. That's
Greeks,
yeah.
like
I
getting
was
a
like,
little
the
no,
Greeks
no,
and all
thanks.
that
extra
shit. I
calendar
know
spreads.
it gets a little
But
crazy.
call spreads are actually a good idea. Knowing how to sell front month and buy something deeper, to get yourself some credit like that. There are ways of like basically lowering the cost of expressing a long trade while slightly the, capping your returns. But understanding Vega, understanding theta. That's the thing that
Right.
most newbies don't quite catch. When the IV spikes, understanding what that means to your options premium and how much you're paying for the exposure. Um, there's a lot of good YouTubes out there. My buddy Evan, who's in the chat, not here right now, but he's in the Signal group. He's got some good information on that. He sells options for a living. Um, so yeah, you guys should ping him, Evan Medeiros. He runs a website called The Trade Risk. Um, yeah, he's pretty sharp and he's BTC Maxi too. So
I mean, there's a ton of good info in
Nice.
here. And for anybody here who's not a BTC Maxi or is just starting their Bitcoin journey, I saw a really funny, I'm sure other people saw it, but Preston Pish and American Hodl, kind of going the two ways that you can get into Bitcoin. One is, if you're not sure about a DCA and American Hodl being like, don't be a fucking pussy and, lump sum that shit. And I'm in the lump sum category, and I say that because I wish I had lump summed when I started, and I don't know anybody who looking back on it, didn't think to themselves, man, I should have just wired as much money as I could to an exchange and bought Bitcoin. And I think about like if I knew how a wire transfer worked back then, I'd probably have a couple more $1 million of Bitcoin at this point. Um, and I very much side on the side of American Hodl. Like get your lump sum in there and then figure out how to
yeah,
DCA.
which you can do both, right?
You
Like
can do
let's
both.
say you
Right.
come into 30 grand, right? And it's like, all right, I'm just gonna go all in with 15K and the other 15K I'm gonna, DCA over 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
You do a whole cycle if you want to. It just depends on your risk tolerance because the psychology of Bitcoin is you either have too much or you don't have enough. It's never just
Too
right.
much. You tell me I want to meet that person. What?
I'm no, I mean, dude, sometimes you have too much when it's the bottom of a bear market, you're like, shit, I got too much. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you
Never
just
felt that way. I don't know that. I don't know
do it, bro. I mean, because you and I have been in the game for like over a decade here, and so
that.
you forgot what that's like. But I remember my bags felt heavy in 2014. They
Yeah.
felt heavy in 2019. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it's
I feel you.
it
I
gets
know. For me,
sketchy.
it was more like, man, how do I get more? How do I get more? How do I get more? I don't know. It's a fun
I
game we're playing.
respect.
And now we're watching Nation States and Michael Saylor do it. So I'm just here for the ride. And 2024 was great. 2025 is going to be even better. So I
Amen to
just
that.
want to be as optimistic about the world as I am, and I think that's in large part thanks to Bitcoin. So
True, true.
on that note, cheers, everybody. There probably won't be one next week because it's Christmas time, and we'll see if there's enough of a quorum to get together the week after. But otherwise, if not next week, well, wait, is next week the last Tuesday of the year, or we got one more?
One more.
One more, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's like the
So,
31st, man. That might be New Year's.
oh, is that New Year's? Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, that's unlikely.
this will probably be the last one for the year. I'm sure we'll be chatting up a bunch in MSTR, but probably restart these again that first week, the 7th or 6th, whatever it is, in 2025. So between now and then, who knows what Bitcoin's going to do? But thanks for.
Don't lose all your money before then. No
Well,
one's allowed to sell until our next meeting. So
Don't lose all your money
definitely.
between now and then. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick note. I was looking at old tax shit for from Coinbase, and I saw some of my buys. I bought 10 Bitcoin for $280, and I remember it being
$280.
expensive. I remember it feeling mad expensive. What the fuck am I doing with this drug money? You know? And so it's just like, if it feels
Well,
expensive to you, let me tell you, you have no
here's the
idea.
Amadeus, my friends. That is
It's
a good
it's
OG
just
note
keep
to
on buying those stupid fucking magical internet money
keep
tokens.
buying it, man. Keep
This
buying it.
shit's
All
this
right,
shit's
y'all.
crazy.
It's good talking to you. Happy
Yeah.
New Year, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you in 25.
But
Cool.
Love it.
Thanks for everything.
Thanks, guys. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.